Okay, so good morning, students. Today we have to start from the last paragraph of page 26. One went in, not as into most shops. Now, see, they had, because they made customized goods, right? They made customized shoes, means according to the requirement of the customers. So the method of dealing with the customers was also different, right? So the author has described how did they entertain their customers. One went in, not as into most shops, in a mood of please serve me and let me go. Like when you enter any shop, you go with the attitude that serve me, cater to my needs, and let me go, but restfully. But while entering the shop of Jessler Brothers, you were supposed to go restfully with a lot of time. You cannot go in a hurry, but restfully as one enters a church. And sitting on the single wooden chair, and then inside the shop one wooden chair was kept, and you were supposed to be seated on that wooden chair, waited for there was never anybody there, and then you have to sit on that chair and wait, because nobody will be present there to welcome you in that shop, which normally happens in the rest of the shops, right? People even call, aye aye, come, right? They say like this, but in this shop you will have to enter the shop very patiently with a lot of time, and then you will have to, there was a wooden chair kept, you were supposed to sit on that wooden chair. Soon over the top edge of that sort of a well, rather dark and smelling soothingly of leather, because it was a shoe shop, so obviously the smell of leather was something which was very common, and that place which formed the shop, there would be seen his face. Then after being seated for some time on the first floor, they must be working on the first floor, so everything which appeared to be dark and smelling of leather, from that floor somebody peered down. Peered down means, peering means to look carefully, right? So somebody peered down. A guttural sound and tip tap of bass slippers. Bass slipper means wooden slippers, the slippers made of wooden fiber, right? So then somebody would look down from top, and then after some time you would hear the sound of that tip tap sound of the slipper, because the person was coming downstairs, beating the narrow wooden stairs, and he would stand before one without food. And then you will see one person standing in front of you, Mr. Jessler standing in front of you without his coat on, because he must have been working, right? So obviously a cobbler will not work with his coat on. A little bent, and he was a little bent, structure was a little bent, and in leather apron with sleeves turned back, and sleeves, they were folded. He was wearing a leather apron, blinking as if awakened from some dream of, and the expression on his face was as if he had been awakened from some dream of boots. He was busy in his dreamland of boots, working on his boots, and all of a sudden he has been awakened and disturbed from his dream, or like an owl surprised in daylight and annoyed at this interruption. Or he would seem like an owl. Owls are awake during the night, so as if an owl has been awakened during the daytime and he is annoyed, he didn't like this interruption. So that kind of expression was there on the face of the person, that is Mr. Jessler, because he was very much busy and absorbed in his job of shoemaking, and then a customer came and he disturbed him from his dream, and he was distracted by the customer. So that kind of expression was there on his face. And I would say, how do you do, Mr. Jessler? Could you make me a pair of Russia leather boots? So then the author would say, request him to make a pair of boots. Without a word, he would leave. Then what would happen? He would not utter a word, and then he will go inside. Retiring whence he came. Retiring whence means where. From the place where he came, he would again go back to that place. or into the other portion of the shop. And I would continue to rest in the wooden chair. And the author would continue sitting on that wooden chair, waiting for Mr. Jessler to come back. Again, inhaling the incense of his trade. The incense of his trade means the smell of leather. Inhaling the smell of leather, because his trade was leather, right? He dealt in leather, and so the incense means the smell of his trade, that is the smell of leather. The author would very nicely again sit on that chair, smelling leather. Soon he would come back, holding in his thin veined hand. Thin veined hand means what happens when a person is very thin, the veins of his hand are visible. So that is the meaning of veined hand. A piece of gold brown leather. So again, he would go back and come with a piece of gold brown leather in his hand. With eyes fixed on it, he would remark. And he would not look at the customer. He would not look at the author. He would instead be admiring that piece of leather. And then he would utter, what a beautiful piece. What a beautiful piece means what a beautiful piece. He would admire that leather and would say, what a beautiful piece of leather this is. When I too had admired it, he would speak again. And the author would also admire that piece. And when both of them have finished admiring, then he would say, when do you want them? Means when do you want them? When do you want your shoes? And I would answer, oh, as soon as you conveniently can. And the author's reply would be, whenever it is feasible for you. And he would say, tomorrow fortnight. Means fortnight. Fortnight is a period of 14 days, 2 weeks. Or if he were his elder brother, I will ask my brother. And if it was not Mr. Jessler, if it was Mr. Jessler's elder brother, then his reply would be that I will ask my brother when I would be able to provide you with your shoes. Then I would murmur, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Jessler. Good morning, he would reply. So then he would reply, good morning. Still looking at the leather in his hand, still not looking at the author or the customer. He would still go on admiring the piece of leather in his hand. And as I moved to the door, I would hear the tip-tap of his bar slippers, restoring him up the stairs to his dream. And as the author would move out of his shop, he would again hear the same sound of tip-tap. That means Mr. Jessler was again going back to that well where he was, that dark well where he was working on that piece of leather, making boots. But if it were some new kind of footgear, this was the normal procedure which was followed once you entered the shop of Jessler Brothers. But if you went there with some new kind of footgear means shoes, right? Shoes or any kind of covering for the foot, right? So if it was some new kind of footwear which you wanted, then he had not yet made, then indeed he would observe ceremony. Then another ceremony was also to be observed. He would observe ceremony. What was the ceremony that has been described later on? Divesting me of my boot and holding it long in his hand. Divesting means taking out. What was the ceremony? If you went to the Jessler Brothers and ordered them to make some new kind of boot which has not been made by them, then they would take your measurements also, the measurements of your foot also. And so how was it taken? That was the ceremony which was observed by them. Divesting me of my boot. Divesting me of my boot means he would take out his boot. Means obviously when the writer will go there, he will be wearing his boots. So he would take out the boots, and after taking out his boots, holding it long in his hand, looking at it with eyes at once critical and loving. So he would admire, because those boots were also made by Mr. Jessler. So he would take out the boots which the author was wearing and then look at them, admire them, look at them with a critical look, with love in his eyes. See, anything which has been created by you, you will always have an affection towards that particular thing. So he would admire them, look at them critically, as if recalling the glow with which he had created it, as if trying to recollect the glow with which he had created them, And why critical? And rebuking the way. He was critical. Why? Because rebuking the way in which one had disorganized this muscle, and how badly they have been treated, how glowing these boots were, how wonderful they looked when it was created by me, and what kind of ill treatment has been meted out to them by the wearer. That means the writer in this particular case. So for this, he had that critical look in his eyes, and the loving look, because it was one of his greatest creations. So that is why he had love for those boots which he took out from the author's feet, and was critical because they have been kept in one had disorganized that master, right? Then placing my foot on a piece of paper. Then the next thing, after he has admired those boots, been critical about those boots, that they have not been worn properly by the wearer, and then he would place the foot of the author on a piece of paper. He would 2 or 3 times tickle the outer edges. Why tickle the outer edges? He was trying to take the measurement. You must have seen that this is how the measurements were taken. The foot was placed on a piece of paper, and then with a pencil or a pen, right, they would draw around the edges. So piece of paper, he would 2 or 3 times tickle the outer edges with a pencil and pass his nervous fingers over my toe. And then he would teach nervous fingers, because his fingers were very weak, because he was very thin, so maybe his fingers were trembling. So that is why he passed his nervous fingers over my toes, and then he would touch his toes, feeling himself into the heart of my requirement, so that he can feel the requirement of the customer, so that he can design boots which fit perfectly to the author, right? Properly fitted, to give them a proper fitting. He will take the measurements and then touch the foot. So this was the ceremony which was observed. This was the ceremony which was observed whenever a customer went to his shop and ordered a pair of boots which Mr. Jessler had never made. I cannot forget that day. Then he remembers another occasion. Like, see, in this entire story, the writer is remembering different instances, right? Then he remembers another instance and he says, I cannot forget that day on which I had occasion to say to him, Mr. Jessler, that last pair of town walking boots creaked. So he still remembers that day when he went to his shop and he complained about a pair of boots which were made by Mr. Jessler. What did he say? He said that, Mr. Jessler, the last pair of walking boots which were made by you, they creak. Creaking means to make a scraping sound when you walk, na? To make a sound while walking. He looked at me for a time without replying. And what was the result of this? Mr. Jessler looked at the author for some time without replying, as if expecting me to withdraw or qualify the statement. As if he was like expecting the author to take back his statement or reconfirm that statement, say it again. Because this was something very difficult for Mr. Jessler to take, that there was some problem, there was some complaint in the boots which have been made by him, because he was very, very passionate about his art. He took his work very seriously. So then a customer complaining about his boots was something which will not be accepted by Mr. Jessler very easily. So he just looked at the author quietly, without replying, without saying anything for some time. It shouldn't have creaked. And then after looking at the author for some time, what did he say? He said that it shouldn't have creaked, right? It did, I am afraid. And the author said, but it did. Your shoes, they made this creaking sound. You got them wet before they found themselves. What is the meaning of this? So the shoemaker, that is Mr. Jessler, he said that you must have got them wet. Wet means wet before they found themselves. Before they found themselves means, see what happens when you get a new pair of boots. First, you have to wear them for some time so that they are set according to the shape of the foot, right? So he said that is what he's trying to say, that you must have got them wet before they were set properly on your foot. So if they will be wet before setting properly on your foot, then they will make this sound. I don't think so. So the writer denied to this also, and he said that no, but I don't think so, so that I got them wet. At that, he lowered his eyes, as if hunting for memory of those. And when the writer replied that no, the boots, they were not wet. So he just lowered his eyes. Mr. Jessler lowered his eyes as if he's trying to recollect about those boots which made creaking sound. And I felt sorry I had mentioned this phrase. See, when this thing was uttered by the author, he just said very casually, right? He went to the shop of Mr. Jessler and very casually he said that the last pair of shoes you made, the walking boots you made for me, they are making creaking sound. He didn't take it so seriously. But this particular fact that there was a problem in the boots made by them was taken very seriously by Mr. Chester. And what happened as a result of it? That the writer himself started feeling sorry for it. That why did he even utter such a thing? I had mentioned this grave thing. So the writer was feeling guilty that why did he utter such a serious thing? Send them back, he said. I will look at them. So in the end, Mr. Jessler said that send them back. It is send them back. I will look at them. Means I will see what can be done about it. I'll try to rectify the defect. A feeling of a compassion for my creaking boots surged up in. So then the moment Mr. Jessler said this, the writer developed a feeling of compassion for his creaking boots. So well could I imagine the sorrowful long curiosity of regard which he had bent them. So bent on them. So why? Because the writer started feeling how many hours he must have bent on those shoes and worked on them to create them. That is why the author started feeling guilty. That why did he even mention the problem of those walking boots? Because he must have spent hours trying to make that pair of shoes. Some boots means some boots, he said slowly, are bad from birth. Birth means it's birth from the beginning. So Mr. Jessler said that some boots are bad from the beginning. If I can do nothing with them, I take them off your bill. So if I am not able to do anything with them, if I am not able to rectify the problem, if I am not able to solve this problem of creaking sound made by the boots, then I will take them off your bill. This shows, what does this tell about Mr. Jessler? What does this tell about Mr. Jessler's attitude, or what type of person he was? It talks about his honesty. If you go to a shopkeeper today and you complain that this product is not up to the mark, there is this problem in this particular product, what will he do? Will any shopkeeper say that come back, I will take it and remove it from your bill? No. At the most, what they will say is that you can exchange, right? Few will not say even that. That goods once sold, they have been sold, now I cannot do anything. You must have not handled them properly. All these things they tell us. But this shows the honesty, right? If the customer satisfaction was something very important for them, right? If the customer is not satisfied with my product, I will take it back. So once only, then the writer recalls another incident, right? This incident was over of complaining about a pair of boots. Then he recalls another and he stresses once, only once in his lifetime, only once when from the time he has been acquainted to Mr. Jessler. I went absent-mindedly into a shop in a pair of boots bought in an emergency from some large firm. Now, another incident which happened was that once in his life, he made this mistake of entering Mr. Jessler's shop in a pair of boots, and that too absent-mindedly. Absent-mindedly means he didn't even notice, right? So he absent-mindedly entered their shop wearing a pair of boots which he had bought in an emergency. In an emergency situation, he had to buy that factory-made boots at some large firms. And so what happened at that time? He took my order without showing me any leather. This was Mr. Jessler's reaction. The moment he saw those boots, which the author was wearing, and he realized that these boots have not been made by him, he didn't even bother to show the leather. You remember, before making the boots for the customer, he used to go back in and bring the leather, which will be used to make the particular pair of boots. But this time, he didn't show the leather to the author. And I could feel his eyes penetrating the inferior integument of my foot. Integument means the covering, right? The covering, the inferior quality of the covering. And he was looking at it with a lot of attention, right? Very attentively, he was looking at the inferior quality of the foot cover which I was wearing, the inferior quality of the shoes which I was wearing. And what did he say in the end? He couldn't stop himself and he said, Mr. Jessler, what did he say? Those are not my boots. He said that these are not my boots. Means I'm not the maker of these boots. I have not made. The tone was not of anger, not one of anger, nor of sorrow, not even contempt. So the tone in which he said it was devoid of anger or sorrow or of contempt. But there was something in that tone. The author is not able to understand the correct emotion in the tone in which Mr. Jessler said this sentence. Those are not my views. And there was in it something quiet that closed the heart. Right? There was no anger in his tone. There was no sorrow in his tone. There was not even contempt or hatred in his tone. But there was definitely something in his tone which froze the blood of the author. Right? Which pinched his heart very deeply. He put his hand down and pressed a finger at the place where the left boot, endeavoring to be fashionable, was not quite come. And what did he do? What did Mr. Jessler do? He very quietly bent down and just pressed at a particular spot where the boot was trying to be fashionable, right? Or look very stylish and fashionable. And at that particular point, it was not comfortable. This was the expertise, this was the skill which the Jessler brothers had. That while looking at the boots, they can make out that the boot is not comfortable in this particular place, or it is hurting the customer or the wearer at this particular place. This tells us about their skill and their knowledge about the boots. It urges you there, he said. And then after pressing at a particular spot, what did Mr. Jessler say? He said that it hurts you there. Those big firms have no self-respect. Trash. He said that these big firms, they don't have self-respect. They don't care about the comfort of the customer. They are only busy making profits, trying to earn as much profit as possible for them, without bothering about the customer satisfaction. Trash. It means trash. Trash means rubbish. And then as if something has given way with. And then what happens? Something, as if something has given away, something has given a vent to his feeling, right? Vent to a lot of things which were inside him. This incident gave a vent to a lot of things which were contained inside Mr. Jessler's heart, that he started speaking long and bitterly. He spoke long and bitterly, that he went on for a long period of time, and whatever he uttered was a bitter speech. It was the only time I ever heard him discuss the conditions and hardships of trade. This was the only time, that is the first and the last time that the author heard Mr. Gessler discuss the difficulties and the problems which they are facing, right? Or which their trade is facing. They get it all. This is what he said. See, this is important, right? They get it all. They is the big firms, right? They is used for the big firms. They get it all. He said they get it by advertisement, not by word. So he said, what was he trying to say? That they are taking away all our customers, right? And they are taking away our customers not by work, not by the quality of their work. They are taking away our customers by the advertisement. They take it away from us. Who love our boots? It's love. Who love our boots means who love our boots. It comes to this. It comes to this means it comes to this. Presently, I have no work. So he says that as a result of this particular fact that most of our customers, they have left us and started buying boots from these big firms, large firms. The result or the repercussion of this fact is that now presently at the present moment, I have no work left. Every year it gets less. You will see. So he tells the author that every year our customers, they are going down, they are decreasing, because the people, they have started preferring the goods manufactured by the big firm. And looking at his lined face, I saw things I had never noticed before. And when, see, you may not feel pity and sympathy for a person without knowing his, without knowing what are the problems in his life, or what all adversities the person is facing. But after knowing the reality, after Mr. Gessler gave a vent to his feelings or whatever was inside him, what happened? And looking at his lined face, I saw things I had never noticed before. The writer all of a sudden realized and felt all those things which he had never noticed in the past. He had never realized in the past that Mr. Gessler could be undergoing so much pain or so many difficulties. This was the first time that he realized their pathetic situation or miserable condition. Bitter things and bitter struck. And what a lot of gray hairs there seemed suddenly in his red beard. And because that feeling of pity came inside him, along with guilt, because author was also a part of those people or also belonged to that group who bought shoes from the large firms, because he entered their shop wearing a pair of shoes which was bought from the large firm. So that feeling of guilt as well as that feeling of compassion towards the Gessler brother, that is Mr. Gessler, right? What happened as a result of it? He started noticing a lot of gray hair that seemed suddenly in his red beard, right? That he appeared to be more his I mean, he could understand his plight in a better manner, right? Any problem till here? Okay. So all of a sudden he developed great pity for Mr. Jester when he became aware of the reality, right? As best as I could, I explained the circumstances of the purchase of those ill-omened. I told you that they, along with pity, there was a feeling of guilt also inside the author. Guilt because he also belonged to those to that particular group of people who go to the large firm, because he was wearing the boot manufactured by the large firm at that moment. So what did he try to do? What did the writer try to do? He actually tried his level best to explain the circumstances and the situation in which he was forced to buy those ill-omened boots. Ill-omened means like a bad sign, something which is a bad sign. But his face and voice made so deep impression. During the next few minutes, I ordered many pairs. So what was the result of the guilt and the compassion which he felt for Mr. Jessler? That he ordered several pair of boots, right? To overcome that feeling of guilt. First, he tried to explain the circumstance or the emergency of the situation in which he had to buy those pair of boots from the large firm. And then later on, to make good everything, what he did was, because he deeply felt for Mr. Jessler, he, in the next few minutes, he ordered many pairs, more than he required. After that, what happened? Nemesis fell. Nemesis is, what is the meaning
Ma'am,
of
a Greek
nemesis?
goddess.
Huh?
A Greek goddess.
Yes, a Greek goddess. The Nemesis is the goddess of retribution, right? Goddess of retribution means you will have to pay for your sins. Means you will have to pay for your deeds. You will have to pay for your whatever you do, right? So Nemesis fell here means as a result. Now the author became very emotional and bought several pairs of boots. What happened as a result of this? Nemesis fell means he was not able to visit their shop for a long period of time. We have already been told that the quality of the goods manufactured by these people, that is Jessler Brothers, was very good. They went on for a long period of time, right? They were not damaged easily. So because of this thing which he did, he ordered several pairs. As a result of it, he had to suffer. Means he didn't get an opportunity to meet Mr. Jessler in near future. Nemesis fell. They lasted more terribly than ever. Several pair of boots ordered in one go, and the boots were of good quality, which were not willing to be damaged, or there was no wear and tear in those boots. So what happened? I was not able conscientiously to go to him for nearly 2 years. So what happened as a result of it? That the author was not able to go for nearly 2 years, right, to their shop. When at last I went, I was surprised to find that outside one of the two little windows, and then during these 2 years, what happened? When the author went to their shop for after 2 years, he saw a big change. What was the change? To find that outside one of those little windows of his shop, another name was painted. You remember how their shops were? In a street, two shops which led into one. Means outside it would seem that there are two shops, and inside they were combined together into one. So what happened? Outside one of those little windows of his shop, another name was painted, right? Also that of a bootmaker, making of course for the royal family. And the another bootmaker here, he mentioned before on his board that they make boots for the royal family, like most of the other shoemakers did, right? So the name was mentioned that they make boots for, of course, for the royal family. So another name was painted outside one of the shops. The old familiar boots, no longer in dignified isolation, were huddled in the single window. Now earlier what happened? There were two windows, right? So the boots which were kept and which have been kept, they were huddled together in one shop. Huddled together means packed together in a disorganized manner in the single window. Why? Because the other shop was now owned by the other person. So the shoes which were kept on those two windows in isolation means with a lot of space for them. But now the space was less, so they were huddled together in one window. Means closely packed together in one window. Inside the now contracted well of the one little shop was more scented and darker than ever. Now, because the entire stuff came into one shop, so it became more dark and more scented. More scented means, here means it's that like more smell of leather was there inside one shop, because now everything, now the space was left and the quantity of the material was the same. So it became darker and more scented of leather. And it was longer than usual too, before a face peered down. Now, again, the author went after 2 years. So again, the same procedure will be followed. So he had to wait for a longer period of time now when a face just peered from top, and then again the tip tap of the bar slippers began. At last he stood before me and gazing through those rusty iron spectacles. Iron spectacle means the glasses, right? Which had iron frame, and that frame was rusty. He said, Mr. Isn't it? So he said, Mr. Jessler came and he tried to recognize the author, but he was not able to recollect his name. So he said, you are Mr. And then he was not able to speak the name, isn't it? Right? That's what he said. I think we should stop here and then we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.